Hello, and welcome back to Things Are Going Great For Me, a podcast about the arts and the entertainment business. My name is J. Claude Deering. I'm an actor and a comedian. If you're new here, welcome. Pull up a chair and get comfortable. Or head out for that jog, because we want you all to enjoy yourselves. My favorite thing to do while listening to podcasts is to do the dishes. A little doing the dishes therapy. On each episode of this series, you'll hear from huge movie stars, big TV stars, and even some bright, shining Broadway stars, as well as second guest interviews with exciting, up-and-coming comics and actors, and established producers, authors, and writers. We banked all the episodes, which also makes this series a time capsule of events that occurred throughout an historic summer. This is the last episode of this limited series. And thanks to your warm response, your kind ratings, and very sweet messages, we are at this moment officially considering this the end of season 1. This has been a weird year, to say the least. Everybody has been dealing with a personal story that is complicated and full of more than normal concern and worry. For me, this year, my car got stolen. I lost a job I really liked. My family has been dealing with health issues. My wife and I were parents to a newborn, and suddenly we became a full-time daycare in addition to a preschool for our oldest child. For my own personal mental health, I needed this series. Winston and I had geared up to start the podcast back in January. Little did we know that we would have the opportunity of having some of the most brilliant people be home and needing a way to connect and talk some stuff out. I recorded with Chris Pine back in March, and I hung on to that interview for about a month. It wasn't until April that I recorded my interview with Brandon Scott. Then, with no clear end in sight for our current worldwide health crisis, I started to pick up steam. It brought me closer to friends, and it's given me even more respect for people I've known for a long time, and some who I'd never really had an opportunity to chop it up with in a deeper way. I've been lucky throughout my life to be friends with some truly extraordinary people, often finding common value in the arts. The future of the arts is a question mark right now, but I'm hopeful. I'm glad to know the people I've had on this series. They've all given me hope for a more equitable life in the arts, one in which much-needed stories get told. I'm getting emotional. And I want to say thank you to the listeners who've shown up to join the conversation. There are a million podcasts out there. There are quite a few actory podcasts. My greatest hope is that you found this series spiritually nutritional. I wanted it to be a sort of like My Dinner with Andre of the actory podcasts. We could go deep inside baseball within the arts, but we could also have a laugh. We could go highbrow and lowbrow. We could talk about Peter Brook and swollen assholes. We could talk about career, but also other things: mental health, marriage, kids, politics, activism, religion, education, craft, music, disease, disparity, loss, work-life balance, fuck-ups, getting fucked up, the complicated idea of niceness, abandonment, opportunity, identity, happiness. I hope to share that a movie star could show surprising vulnerability and that someone in the hustle could show incredible bravery. That it's always life on life's terms. No year has that been more true than 2020. No pitch at the top today for ratings and reviews, but it wouldn't be an episode of this show if I didn't welcome you all formally to this final episode of Season 1. So here it is. Hey, Apple Podcast peeps. We see you, Spotify folks. Hey now, Stitcher fam. What's up, you freaky Pocket Casts cats? Hey, Breaker brethren and sistren. Salutations, Radio Public people. Hello, you Overcast outroverts. Welcome to the party, Google Podcasters. We love you all equally, and we hope you love what you've heard, and we're going to try to keep bringing you new episodes of this show. And by the way, we're thrilled to be sponsored for this limited series by Icelandic Glacial, the purest tasting water on Earth, sourced from the legendary Ulfus Spring in Iceland, naturally filtered through ancient lava rock, and certified carbon neutral for both product and operation. You are what you drink. Be a force of nature. Icelandic Glacial, natural spring water, sourced from Iceland. Available on Amazon, IcelandicGlacial.com, and a retailer near you. Today's first guest is Tembi Locke. Tembi is a veteran actor and New York Times bestseller for her memoir, From Scratch, soon to be a Netflix series starring Zoe Saldana. It's a heartbreaking and beautiful story about the loss of her first husband, a wonderful Italian chef named Saro, to cancer. The book was also featured in Reese Witherspoon's Reese's Book Club. Tembi and I worked together on a Blumhouse YouTube original series called 12 Deadly Days, just one of 52 series she's worked on in her very busy career. We talk about the changes to actor pensions and residuals over the years. We also talk about her parents' activism and being targeted by the FBI's notorious COINTEL program. She also talks about the historic nomination of Kamala Harris for Vice President of the United States. Tembi is lovely. She's multi-talented, insightful, and brilliant. It's a wonderful chat. I'll be speaking with her in a few minutes. And a little bit later, you'll also get my conversation with Vinny Chhibber. Vinny is a fast-rising actor and producer, and a strong activist for better representation in Hollywood, both in front of and behind the camera. He recently starred as Liam Bhatt in the Ava DuVernay and Greg Berlanti exec-produced CBS series The Red Line. Vinny talks about the importance of voting and civic engagement, his work as a co-founder of the Salon, a forum whose mission is to accelerate the creative development of South Asian American television and film through community organizing and empowerment. He also talks the disappointment of losing a lead in a new TV show due to the shutdown. Vinny is another graduate of the conservatory program at Stella Adler, so we go way back. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss it. Joining me again today is my producer and co-host, Winston Carter. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I remember the beginning of the pandemic felt like, at first it felt like a big pause for the whole world. We started living life inside and spending a lot more time alone. What have you learned about yourself in this quarantine?
I've learned how I'm very lucky is I think what I've learned most. I was always aware that like I'm a person who's not from LA but has family near here. Like my close family lives within 100 miles of LA. So I've been very lucky to have like people to go see and interact with, and like especially now we're kind of staring down the barrel of the holidays, and I'm like, I still get to spend the holidays with my family. I'm very lucky to have that opportunity.
Cool. Yeah.
But so like for me, it's mainly been like, oh, this was an adjustment to my life, and I know like especially at the beginning, everyone was talking about how like, oh, I'm kind of built for this. And aside from not doing shows, most of my day to day now is the same as it was before. I have a more stable job than I did for years when I was working as a contractor, but otherwise I'm in coffee shops less, which is fine. And I'm still like, I think the other thing is like, it's weird how, yeah, you were right. It felt like this big pause, like this kind of terrifying thing at the beginning. And the thing that I keep thinking about is that's still out there and everyone's just a little more used to it. And that's a little disconcerting to me.
Are you looking forward to shaking hands with folks again? Giving hugs? Do you think it's going to be a while before you feel comfortable doing that?
The second I get that vaccine, and if they're like, it's safe, like you're good to go, I am fully prepared to take a month off work and lose my damn mind. It's going to be wild. If I make it through COVID, then the real question will be, will I make it through my first month out?
So we're already. So you think the partying is just going to be nuts?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's going to have to be. I think everyone. I also think it's going to be very weird because everyone's going to like. There's all types of little social things that I think we get. What I feel really rough for is kids growing up right now, like missing that social. Like that's I can't imagine. My hope is that we are very resilient beings and we will bounce back from that. Like you can reacquire those skills, especially if everyone's set back the same amount.
Did you vote?
I did. Oh, did I vote? Oh yeah. I voted. I think I dropped it in the box a week ago. Yeah, maybe a little longer.
We did our mail-in ballot.
I did the whole thing.
Yeah. Did you go on and confirm your vote on lavote.net?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. My vote has been counted. It'll count for the whatever 5% of some other people's votes that it counts for, but whatever.
You want to jump?
That is maybe my one big regret. That's my big regret, is that I did not move to a place where my vote would have been more impactful in this election. I genuinely do regret.
You didn't move to Naples, Florida, just for this voting, just for this election.
Why not? I could have. I keep thinking that. I'm like, literally, we were all given, like, half of LA, who are like people who like, things hit hard and they're kind of out of work, and now they're having. I'm like, we were given a huge move anywhere you want, you can impact this election thing by fate, and I didn't take advantage of it, and I do regret that.
Do you want to?
I think also. What?
Do you want to jump on the phone with me on this week and make some calls?
Yeah, man. Oh, I'm down. I need to make some calls. Yes. I mean, I had to call. I called Arizona for Hillary, and nothing can be worse than the responses from that. So,
I don't know. I made calls for Obama in '08, and those calls were weird.
Oof, oof, oof.
Some weird responses from people.
But yeah,
I talk about it in my interview with Vinny. Are you looking forward to having a little extra time once this podcast is finished for this season?
Yes, I am looking forward to. I'm looking forward to, but I'm also like in my brain already racking up like this is who I want to be on the show next time.
Right.
Like I've already like started making those lists. So yeah, I'm excited for it. It's you know.
When do you want to start? You want to start in January?
Yeah, man.
All right.
I think my
after the election,
goal
I want to see what happens with the election, and then
because I might be living in Canada, so we'll figure this out.
We'll keep doing it remotely. Are you excited about the holidays?
Incredibly! It's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, me too.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to. I don't know how much family we're going to be seeing, but I'm excited to just roll out the holiday movies and spike the eggnog and do it up.
Yeah, I'm jazzed. I'm just very. I mean, who doesn't? It is going to make it like. I always get very sentimental. I've had a lot of really lovely holiday experiences in my life, but this will be different, and that's okay. It's just going to be a different version of it, you know, and that's fine. So I'm just like, and once again, I'm super lucky, you know. I'm like gonna be with family I'm probably gonna go stay for a month and like really be there, and I'm very lucky to be able to do that. There's a lot of people, my girlfriend being one of them, who are facing tough questions of do they go see their family at the holidays? Probably not, but who knows? You know, like that's a decision I don't have to make, which is nice.
Well,
yeah, so it'll just be different.
Well, listen, man, I love you, dude. Thank you for doing this with me.
You're the best.
This has been so much fun, and it's really helped me during this period of time. Thanks for your encouragement. It's always been great checking in with you week after week.
Yeah.
And day after day.
This has been a blast.
All right, folks. As always, you've been very patient with us. Without further ado, here now is the hugely talented and wonderful Tembi Locke. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today? Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so happy to have you joining me. I am doing good. It's hot. I'm in Massachusetts. We were talking a little bit about this before we started.
The last time I was in Massachusetts was just after I graduated college. I was in Great Barrington.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been a million moons ago. And I remember the Norman Rockwell Museum. That's the last thing I saw in Massachusetts, though.
Amazing. Norman Rockwell was somewhat progressive, I suppose.
I don't know. I don't even know where to put so many things we can talk about this, but so many things are sort of, we're looking at everything with new eyes.
Yeah.
And of course, I just remember all of the images, and I remember, definitely growing up and not seeing myself in those images. Although recently I've been shown images of his where there are, African-American families or whatnot. And I just, but it was, it's an iconic part of American history. And I remember, being in that part of the world and growing up in Texas, it was just, I was like, oh, this is where all those images come from, this part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. He has a very famous image, a very famous painting called The Problem We All Live With, which is of a little girl. She's being protected as she's trying to go to school.
Okay.
That's what it is.
I think I vaguely remember that image in some way, and it's interesting because and you and I know we're going to talk about this. We talk about sort of art and word and creativity and all that good stuff. But, you know, words have such powerful meaning, you know, along with the images.
Yeah.
And so I hear, without looking at the image, right? When I hear just the words, the problem we live with, that can be read so many different ways.
Yeah.
One of which is, she's the problem we live with, you know, or this situation, this America is the problem we all, you know, but framing it from the, you know, it's really, it's so fascinating to be, you know, alive at a time when we can actually openly dialogue about so many things that, you know, were, there was no space. It was there, people were talking about it, but there was no collective space to talk about it. So
yeah,
that, along with, you know, many other changes that are happening in the world, which have you in Massachusetts and me here in LA in the middle of, you know, this pandemic, but we are finding a way to still create and stay true to what matters to us and our voices. So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you actually, your family history includes some quite serious activism. It's true, am I correct, that both of your parents were activists and were, in fact, had files at the FBI as part of their COINTEL, their infamous COINTEL program. Is that correct?
Yes. And it's funny, I recently asked both of them if they would like to see their FBI files, and neither of them is interested in it. And I believe they would have to request it. I don't think my sister and I could just like, unless, you know, we had power of attorney of some sort. But I'm just fascinated to know what's in there. And it may be not, it may be one sheet of paper, or it could be, you know, reams of paper. I just have no clue. I'd love to know though.
So that's so fascinating. I didn't know. So basically at this point it has been declassified, and so does that mean, am I correct so far?
I mean, I don't, you know, it's funny. My sister and I joke about the fact that we should read their files, but we actually never have. So I don't know if they're declassified or classified. I've just assumed that my parents would have to be the one to request them. They are just have no interest in seeing them. They are just like, we lived it and we don't ever want to know what the FBI thought of our lives. Because we know what we were living through. And we also know what the FBI was like, you know, as an agency at that time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because growing up, you know, I remember having our phone tapped, you know, in the house. And I'm, you know, of an age where we had, you know, obviously landlines, and, you know, there was like the rotary and push button, you know, phones, physically phones. And I remember being very small and learning how to take off, unscrew the part of the receiver, and take something out if we wanted to call my grandparents. We had to have a special code to talk to our grandparents. For whatever reason, it was like, and I just thought that was the most normal thing in the world. And then when I got to school, elementary school, and realized not everyone like sort of, MacGyvered their receiver of their phone before they call the grandparents. That's when I knew my family's different.
Wow, Tembi, that's so scary to grow up with that amount of fear, even about something that is in your own home, a telephone. I was so normative, but it's interesting. It really helps, you know, now at this age, I can see how that very base sort of, if you will, questioning or second guessing or mistrust of, you know, certain entities that other people held near and dear and true, you know, how that's really informed me as a woman today, as a mother, as a citizen, as an artist. So yeah, absolutely. And am I correct also that so your name was chosen for you by Stokely Carmichael's wife, Miriam McCabe?
Miriam McCabe named me. You know, was a brilliant artist and activist, you know, in her own right, who was known as Mama Africa. She was, you know, exiled from South Africa under apartheid because she sang against the apartheid regime. And although, you know, Nelson Mandela was, you know, imprisoned, you know, inside of country, she was exiled from it. And so she went around the world singing about the atrocities and raising awareness that way. And I feel so honored that she gave me my name. And, growing up, my parents talked about her and her work, but, it was really in high school that I really began to sort of interrogate, not because it was also at the height of the apartheid government, and I was really asking of myself to know who she was and who might she be to me. Obviously, I actually did meet her when I turned 30. I actually did meet her in person, but I didn't know her. There was no like ongoing relationship with my parents, but she was someone that I deeply admired and respected, and I feel very grateful that in some way her voice in the world touched my life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Yeah. So now on a different note entirely, you recently got married.
I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I am one of I'm sure many people who are, doing a pivot in the middle of the pandemic. And, we had a ceremony planned for late spring, early summer. And, that didn't happen. So we just went with it. We did a backyard Zoom wedding.
Well, it looked absolutely lovely. And yeah, I attended my first Zoom wedding this week for two friends of mine.
What did you think?
I mean, it was lovely and beautiful. And, what a wonderful reminder that love exists right now at a time when, things feel like they're falling apart, I guess, in a lot of ways.
You're absolutely right. And that was one of the reasons, ultimately that pulled me to do it. I mean, we will still have, a ceremony in which we gather with, close family and friends, but that is who knows when, who knows when. And so in the meantime, love doesn't just sort of put itself on hold, and we thought, we've made this commitment. Why not commit and do it intimately and safely? We did it in the backyard, just the three of us, and we all exchanged vows to each other, and we married.
Yeah, that's so lovely. I loved looking at all those photos. And now also, I've been having conversations on here with folks who are also parents about being home with our kids. How is it going with the quarantine parenting?
Quarantine parenting is next up. I've said writing a memoir was next level parenting if you include your child in a memoir, which by the way, it is next level parenting to write a book that includes your child. It takes it to a whole other level. But quarantine parenting is like, I'm at a loss for words for the ways in which it is both at times so beautiful, because I'm deeply aware. My daughter's much older than your kids. When I say much older, I mean, they're all kids, but she's 15. So I'm very aware of the fact that, in a short time, I'm not going to have her under my roof, right? We're in our, our sort of that time between parent and child where I'm helping to sort of shape her and form her so that she can fly, she can fly. And so in a way, to be quarantined during that time, when teenagers are normally pushing against parents, right, for independence, for like doing their own thing. And by the way, some of that is totally still going on, but a lot of it is also like a closeness and a sense of gratitude that we have for each other. So it's, it's challenging, and we're all, stuck in the same space, and, the house is both, it's a school, it's an office, it's a home gym, it's an entertainment, we're trying to do everything, out of these four walls, and it's a lot. But
you're still doing the working out, huh? That is a branch too far for me at this point.
Listen, we are all doing it in very uneven, and sort of fits and starts. But we did do something recently that was really cool. We set, I just put like every piece of equipment, and when I say that, I mean it's like, a yoga ball, yoga mats, like, a couple of hand weights. And we put them all in the backyard, and it was like, okay, for 1 hour, we just have family exercise hour in the backyard, period, end of story. Everybody has to do something, whatever that is. And, it's been fun doing that. We look forward to it.
That sounds fun, particularly with when it's a 15-year-old. We're trying to figure that out. I think once we're back in LA, I think I think Mom is going to get her special time to be doing that. And I will maybe get my own time, maybe to just run around in the neighborhood. So now this podcast has turned into a little bit of a time capsule during this quarantine. It was mostly meant to talk about the business, but that meaning the entertainment business. But of course, a lot has been happening. So in that spirit, you and I have already started talking a little bit about what has been going on in the country politically. And today was a momentous day. Kamala Harris was chosen hours before our interview to be Biden's VP pick. Do you have high hopes for Biden-Harris tickets?
Listen, I gotta have let me tell you something. I gotta have high hopes. I wake up in the morning and I pull up my high hopes. I'm like, because without high hopes, we're not getting out of any of this, right? So yes, I do have high hopes. I was very happy to see the smile on my daughter's face when she saw a woman and someone who, looks like her nominated.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we know each other originally from working on a Blumhouse project, which was also a YouTube original series. It was called 12 Deadly Days. It also starred Betty Gabriel, Tia Sircar, and Jonathan Fletcher, amongst others.
I completely remember that. We shot it at my stuff filmed mostly at a mental institution, a former mental institution, a shuttered mental institution somewhere.
For children, I think.
Like somewhere way out the 10 freeway in LA. And I remember thinking, okay, goodness, if these walls could talk. To film a horror series in a place where I know horrors and atrocities, it seemed to me, I don't want to denigrate the state of California, but this building was built in the 30s, the 40s. Yeah. I don't think that they were cutting edge, sensitive, mental health work back in the then. So, right. So I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I sort of had to say an energetic prayer, when we were there. And it was so hot. I don't know if the days you were filming, but I think we filmed in the summer, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. Yeah, no, it was hot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was it was a former mental institution for children, which adds. Oh, Jesus.
That's what it was. Because now you're reminding me, the thing that really haunted my soul, there were metal, old school playground.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the playground equipment that was there?
I do.
Like a merry-go-round and a slide, and it was just with tumbleweeds going by, and it just was so eerie. And I thought, oh my gosh, these you're right, these poor children, Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I were in fact in the very last scene of the first season of the series, which was kind of a fun cliffhanger.
Yeah, that was really fun to do that. Blumhouse does crazy. I've done two projects, maybe 3 for them.
Yeah,
and it's they bring it. They bring the cliffhangers and the gore.
They sure do. Now you have at least 2 substantial careers at this point. As an actor, you got your start in roles on iconic shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Beverly Hills 90210, Martin, Jamie Foxx Show, and Friends.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, I took a look, and in
fact, you went deep.
You have to date at least over 125 episodes of television across 52 TV series. Does that sound right, or am I off?
Oh my gosh, where do you get this data? I like it. I'll use it if I've never seen it put that way, but I'm sure that feels right.
I counted.
Okay, well then there you go. Yeah.
To me, so I'm such a nerd about what we do as performers, and I am so impressed with a career like yours. It's one that I aspire to. So yeah, you've also had some major recurring roles, including Maybe some series regular roles. Is that right? Were you a series regular on Eureka for a few seasons?
I was, it's funny. So if we can just like get, geekish for a minute about the, the sort of the behind the scenes of it. I think,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was what they call like a heavily recurring, I don't know that I'm quite series regular, but I was in the last 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how those of it I did, but it was I loved that show. It was so fun to shoot. It was a breath of fresh air at a time in my life where I really needed it. And
Yeah.
I loved the cast, I loved the crew, I loved flying to Vancouver to work. It was just really, really, and the fans loved the show. They just loved
Yeah.
that show.
And you got to work with Joe Morton? Is that right?
I did.
I mean,
okay,
he's...
funny story. Do you want a funny Joe Morton story?
Oh, please. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so the first day of filming Eureka, my filming of Eureka, I'm coming into a show that's been on the air, a huge fan base, well
Right.
beloved. I think they were in there they'd had 3 seasons, maybe 4 under their belt when I show up for my first day of work. And I know that I'm playing Joe Morton's love interest. And the director, Matt Hastings, had what he wanted to do for that first scene. Now, anyone who sort of is really into, Eureka knows that in that first season that I appear, there's a timeline issue there. And my character thinks she's married to Joe Morton when in fact he doesn't know that she's married to him. And so that's the sci-fi of it all, right? So
Right.
Anyway, the director decided to keep us separate. And so we would not and could not meet until we got on set to begin filming. So no trailer talk, no seeing each other, trying to really create in our like first rehearsals that sort of hold on to that energy. And I remember being so nervous, like in the trailer, like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. I would really feel a lot better if I could just like say hello to him first before meet him. But it worked beautifully because, and Matt knew exactly what he was doing by directing it that way and directing us that way. And Joe, of course, was incredibly gracious, but he was also like, "Who are you?"
Right.
Which is exactly what the character, needs. So it was just, I think Joe and Matt got together and decided that. So anyway, Joe and I film, we have, the 2 seasons that, I play his wife and we have this sort of love interest. And then fast forward to just before the pandemic happens. I'm in New York because my book, which we'll talk about, I'm sure was nominated for an Audie Award. As one of the best audiobooks of this past year.
Right.
And so Joe is in the same building because Joe has a beautiful career as an audiobook narrator. And I see him, and I didn't know he was in the room. So I'm like, Joe, I'm like literally the geek in the room, like waving, Joe, it's me, like across tables. Everybody's like in, black tie and it's all, formal and New York and, books. And I'm like, Joe. And of course, he sees me and it was a really lovely reunion. He gave me a big hug and he was like, what are you doing here? I was like, I have a book, and he was like, yes, so it was just wonderful to talk about we knew each other in this one lane, and I didn't, I knew he recorded books, but it was just wonderful for our book lives to meet up in this space again, and it was almost like a mirror image to the first time we met, where he's like, what are you doing here?
Oh, that's so great. And what a wonderful way to be reacquainted with him with your very substantial book that we're going to talk about. You are a very accomplished writer. You have written a memoir from scratch, a memoir of love, Sicily, and finding home. The book was one of Reese Witherspoon's book club selections. It's also been featured in Oprah magazine. And next up, it will be a Netflix series starring Zoe Saldana, who is playing you.
Okay, the fact that you just strung all those words together that made a sentence that communicated that message still feels surreal to me. I'm just like, wait, what? That's what?
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. Everything you just said is true. Everything you just said is happening, and it is still quite a stroke of just grace and surprise in my life that has come to pass. But yes, I wrote from scratch. I think I got the book deal in 2017 is when I began writing it with an actual deadline and a publisher in mind, because I've been working on it many years while I was acting, I was that person that between takes, you know, I had my notebook out and I was just writing down my thoughts, or I'd go back to my trailer. I didn't eat lunch with anybody, and, you know, and I would just write, you know, mostly for my own gratification and my own sense of, you know, self-exploration.
Yeah.
And without knowing that it would eventually become a book. I think somewhere in my mind, I hoped I might have a book in me. In fact, I recently, when I say recently, meaning in the last year or so ago, I found a journal of mine from, I think it was right before, I think it was like 99 or something. And right before we're getting ready to, you know, turn into toward the new millennia. And I was writing down things that like I would love to happen to me in like the next century, you know. And it was very lofty, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I wrote down, like buried in, and I know you can't even tell you what the other things were, but one of the things was to publish a book. And when I came across that, I was like, wait, what? Because I don't remember writing that. I don't remember, you know, I didn't even remember that journal, but and at the time, I think I was really into photography, and I was hoping that I might have a book of photographs, like a photography book. I think that's what I intended when I put that list. But of course, you know, life takes many turns, and you stay open, and new things happen. And so, more than a photography book, I wrote a memoir, and it went to the New York Times bestseller list.
It's incredible, and it's such a beautiful book. So the story is in part about loss and about grief. It's also about starting over. It features your fairy tale romance with your first husband, an Italian chef named Saro. Mm-hmm. He grew up in Sicily. You were born in Texas. You were, as you were saying, you were studying art history and Italian at Wesleyan, and you had a boyfriend of yours at the time, Connor. Suggested you should do a year abroad in Italy. So what happened with Connor, just as a quick side note?
Connor, I'm sure, is having his life somewhere with that, you know. Yeah, no, I think he understood. Listen, now, actually, in retrospect, for a guy to send his, you know, and I think I'm using very strong language to call him my boyfriend. I don't know that we were that quite,
right.
But we were, you know. But nonetheless, for him to like tell the girl that he's, you know, hanging out with, you should go to Italy, he's basically saying bye-bye, because the minute you get to Italy, hello, as a woman, what do you think is going to happen? So I don't know if he knew he was saying that to me. He was conscious of that. But no, that didn't last past me handing my passport over to the Italians to say.
I thought that was great. Just this little subplot about Connor. So this is, and then of course this is where you met Saro, correct? On this first trip. Okay. So, and then in the very first chapter of your book, it is beautiful and touching. You are driving a small Fiat in a Sicilian village with his ashes. Mm-hmm. He had been your husband in a small wooden box tucked between your legs. He had very, very sadly passed away from cancer. And as a married person myself with kids, I cannot even imagine, although you describe it so thoroughly and heartbreakingly, beautifully, that is a kind of pain that nobody wants to even think of. And particularly this moment when you were explaining what was going on to your, at the time, 7-year-old daughter, Zoella, who is an incredibly brave young woman. There's a lot that is so beautiful in this book. You know, and of course, food does feature heavily here. I found that the book showed a way in which food can serve as many things, one of them being sort of a time machine for memories. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, as actors, we understand the power of an endowed object and sense memory and, you know, all of that. And so, yeah, food is it's one of the first, you know, the sense of taste. I mean, going from childhood, sense of smell, all of that is so primal, almost primal. Our survival depended on it. We have lots of memories packed into different foods. Yeah. And I did try, because, you know, having been married to a chef, I understood the power of that and the power of that to cut across so many, to invite joy, to cut through pain, to invite connection. So, you know, I definitely write about food in that way. But yeah, it's Thank you for your description of the book. Thank you. It means a lot to me.
It was very moving to me, and I think, and to a lot of people. This thing about food as serving this as this interesting connection with the people in our lives who are good at cooking and who love to cook. I mean, I really love to cook. So does my mother. She took French cooking classes. I was so moved by that section in your book where you picked up Sarah's knife.
Yeah.
And felt the weight of it in your hand, and I think that, in that sort of that way that food, it can revive a person in this case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it became, cooking became, kind of an instrument of my grief in a lot of ways. And to a large degree still is. It was a way, especially going into the kitchen in the wake, the first, weeks and then months, year after his passing, and choosing to cook. And by the way, having been married to a chef, I did not do the cooking in the house, just didn't. And, I was an okay cook, ish. But suddenly in the wake of his loss, all that, not only was his physical being gone, but that rapport, that all of that sensory, the life of our senses that we shared together in the kitchen was gone. And so to go into that space and hold his chef's tools, right? To use the cutting board that he used a million times, to use the same pans. It all was imbued with so much memory. And I wanted to write about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've included a number of recipes in this book. Do you think this is now going to be maybe a third career? Where do you go from here with your own cooking? Is there a sequel to From Scratch, do you think, on its way?
It's funny. I'm really toying with my next book. There are a couple of almost sort of competing, how shall I say, competing ideas coming to me right now. And usually if I say that they're competing, it just means I'm still unclear, because there's really one way I'm going to go. I needed to reveal itself and sit more. And I feel like I will continue to, I definitely will continue to write. I think food will hold a space. I would love to just do a cookbook at some point. I don't think that's my second book, but I would love to do one. I'd want to find a compelling reason to do one, and what that cuisine would be, because I don't think I'm someone that's just, hey, these are the 25 favorite recipes of Tembi's. Like, not so interested in that. But if there's a way in which I can, that there's a way in which that the collection of whatever recipes I bring forward in a book hook up to a greater story or some greater sense, then I'd be really driven to do that. I don't quite have that yet, but the other idea that I'm working on would kind of meet up in time and space with my life some 5 years after From Scratch has ended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It
feels like something that you're going to, it will be something that you would just revisit naturally in your life, time and time again.
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because people talk about, I don't know if you know the writer Dani Shapiro, but she's, Dani has like maybe three or four memoirs out. She's also a novelist, but she really sort of circles the wagons of her life in a way that is so compelling, and it's very instructive, the power of narrative. And for those of us who, are interested in sort of reflecting on not only the meaning of our lives, but using sort of moments that pass through our lives to hook up to sort of bigger conversations about just what it means to be human. She inspires me a great deal. And I'm like, if Dani, I see her write about her life through many different prisms. And this was From Scratch, very much looking at my life through the prism of food and loss and love and Sicily and motherhood. And so, my life looks different now than it did 5 years ago. What would I write about now? So I'm asking myself those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And am I right that you are working with your sister, who is a TV writer, on this adaptation for Netflix? Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. I am working with Attica. My sister's Attica Locke. For those who are TV geeks, I will say. So she's been a producer on Empire, and she's been a producer and writer on When They See Us for Netflix, as well as Little Fires Everywhere for Hulu with Reese and Kerry Washington, Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. And so she has this, beautifully prolific and profound television writing career. She is also an accomplished novelist. So my sister has 5 books. I'm going to say that again, 5 books that are all award winning. And so she's really been a champion for me, and I admire her. She's a mentor in a lot. She's a sister. She's a mentor. She's a best friend. She's all these things, right? And so when it came time to sort of look at adapting my memoir, it made sense for us to partner in a way to realize this. One, because it could not be in better hands. I just admire her work as a writer. But 2, she, as my sister, she'll protect the story.
Yeah.
She gets it, she knows it. And she was right beside me for like pretty much every event that I write about in that book. So she knows, of course.
What an incredible support to have. Yeah, if you're going to embark on this story in a different medium, exactly as you said, to have somebody else in the room who also is so established to make sure that you get to tell your story correctly.
Yes, and she really knows. We had a lot of long talks, before we thought about doing this. Not so much because we work well together. That was never really something we discussed. It was more about the idea that, to translate, to your point, to take something from page and to take it to the screen, it's a completely different medium. It's going to require a different way into the story.
Yeah.
And, and I, as a first time screenwriter, because, I wrote co-wrote the pilot with her, was very much like, okay, I kind of have to take off the hat of me who lived it, take off the hat of me who wrote the book, and now put on this new hat, come to this material as if I didn't live it, as if I didn't write it, and go, how would I adapt this? And that was a really trippy, intellectual, and creative pursuit and exercise. But it was trippy, but it was really cool, and it was great doing it with someone who, knows like, we don't need that won't go. Let's, because you like in a page in a book, I can take 2 pages and talk about how, eating pizza for the first time seaside in the Mediterranean made me feel, right? I can take 2 pages and write about that. On screen, that has to be done with 1 visual gesture.
Right.
And maybe 1 line of dialogue.
Or how about when you were talking about the young woman in Italy, you were talking about the smell of cigarettes maybe on her breath when she was pushing sorrow on you?
Exactly. So that, we know as actors, we have to translate that into behavior. That's visual, that's behavior that the audience will see on screen, right?
Yeah.
Because you also, and it may never even require a line of dialogue, but like you've got to like put those sort of details in the script. So it was really a beautifully creative exercise for me as a writer to sort of, and as just a creative person to sort of try my hand at it. And I'm so blessed that I had many people in my life saying, you can do this, you should do this. Nope, of course you have to be a part of the adaptation, because I think there was, there are many of us out there who, for the longest time I thought, well, I'm an actor. And I kind of kept it like, that's the one thing I do. And it's taken me, to this stage in life where I go, wait a minute, I do many things and I can do them well. I can't do them all at the same time, but I do them, I can do them. And I just need to give the space to allow myself to develop. And what I don't know, I need to partner or find mentors who can help me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked also in the book a little bit about that period of when you're in the middle of grief where it's like you as an actor, it's like, how do you show up for an audition? How do you go audition during that period of time?
Oh my God. That was, I have to say, I went through such an identity crisis on so many levels after he passed. One, just who I was in the world without my best friend, the person who had been with me pretty much my whole adult life, who was my, the father of my child. I mean, it was, so I'm in this whole identity crisis. And then on top of it, my relationship with my career as an actor was undergoing a major shift because I wasn't sure how to approach the work anymore because I had the big emotional experience sitting right at the forefront of my life. And I could not always trust that I could just push it aside and step into some other character. And in fact, there were many auditions I would go on, and I worked with a wonderful acting coach who's also a friend and mentor, Julie Areola, and she would often say she could feel when, like, I don't know, maybe I was up for, like, I'm making something up right now, but I think in the book I write about a role of for a police procedural, but that sadness was always in everything I did. I just couldn't, especially early on, and I finally just had to submit to it and say, that is what it is. I'm going to do this series of auditions. It won't always be that way, but I'm not going to not audition.
That takes incredible strength.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring my best self to the room. I may not get anything for the next 6 months, but when and where I can, I'm going to show up. And eventually something will shift. And, I had to sort of be in contract with myself, because before I'd always been like, well, I'm going after this because I really want this part. And a lot of times I didn't necessarily even want the part. I just wanted to get out of my house and maybe have sometimes a reason to put on makeup and clothes. Do you know what I mean? And
you mean the sort of living in LA thing of just like, you got to get out of your apartment? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and that I could never like say that out loud to my agents. I wasn't going to be like, hey, yeah, send me on that audition. I don't actually really want it. I just want to get dressed and get out of the house. But, I had representatives who really, they know me well. They know me intimately. I think on some deep level, without us ever having that conversation, they got that in those first 6 months, I was, a hot mess. And who knows what was going to happen when I went in. And sometimes I booked things, to my surprise. And actually, I played a widow within the first 6 months of losing Sato.
I mean, yeah.
Right?
I cannot imagine, but except that, when you talk to actors, like actors we're clear that I think that people who, when they think about acting, they think of it as like a type, or they take one acting class, they think of it as like therapy. It's not really therapy, but it's typically, it's kind of like these magic tricks that we do for the, to sort of communicate the story to an audience member. But there are, of course, these times where your real story overlaps, very closely with the work that you're doing, and you can have a cathartic experience without question.
Yes. And it was, I think the main thing for me was I understood that I was in survival mode for my whole life. Yeah. And that included me saying, the thing I want at the end of this is to still have some kind of a career, and so I have to keep showing up. And that's just the only. And I couldn't see beyond that, and that was all that mattered. And auditioning is hard. And I did get offered a few parts, and that made it easier in some way, because it was like I think I've never been someone who like I have actor friends who love auditioning. Like they just love the audition.
Oh my God, really? That's incredible.
No, because I think especially before everything went digital and it was like you were just talking into like a camera, meaning when you there was a time in Hollywood, so many moons ago, when there were actually decision makers in the room with you, and you could actually, like, you would be with the screenwriter, you'd be with the director, perhaps, you'd be with a producer, and that was sometimes really fun and collaborative, because you would get a mini sense of what it might be like to work with these people on set, especially if you were working over the course of multiple episodes, right? And there's no substitute for that. You can't just record something into your iPhone and have that be a substitute for actually meeting human beings and talking about the role. So back in the day, I had friends who really loved auditioning in that way because they liked the collaboration. I sort of liked it, but I really love working on set. And that's where I love it. I love it. And it's funny. I have other friends who great auditioners. They get on set and it's harder for them a little bit. It's a little until they get their rhythm. And sometimes if you're in for the day, like you're guest starring one day player. Oh yeah. You don't have time to get into your rhythm. You just kind of got to get there. You're there already. And I've been a journeyman actor for 25 years now, and I've walked on many a set. And, with whomever is the lead of whatever show that is. And sometimes that actor does or doesn't want to rehearse with you. And when the camera rolls, you just got to be ready to go. You only know how to do that when you're a journeyman actor and you've shown up over and over and over and over and over again, and you like working on sets, and you kind of understand the link. You kind of understand you can read the tea leaves a little bit. Is this a set where people are super open? Is this a quiet set? Is this one where, you can talk to the lead actors, and that journeyman actor is a very specific lane that, I hope will stay within our business, but I understand that the way things are changing, it's hard to make a living just doing guest stars. I mean,
it is. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about, because you talked about in your book as well, you talked about earning a pension, that you had earned a good pension from acting, which is such an interesting way of talking about the business, because that, for all the work that I have done, which is not that much, it is, I don't know what that even means to get a pension.
Oh, well, so yeah, listen, it's funny. I am now like one of those, because I've been in the business for 25 years, right? So I now find myself telling the kinds of stories that I heard told to me when I first landed in Hollywood and was on my first set, right? So I remember when I started in the business in the mid 90s, people who were at maybe, let's say they were at the tail end of their career, they would have actually started working in like maybe even the 50s for all I know. You know what I mean? Like they were at the end of, so there were people I'd work with who remembered not getting residuals for things.
Oh,
they remembered when the guild instituted getting residuals and getting a pension and all of those sort of the hard-won rights of being an actor and being a journeyman and dedicating your life to this profession, right? To the artistic pursuit and to the delivery of entertainment to the masses. Like it's an actual career, and that the guild was there to really sort of supply us with to support our lives in a way that we could keep doing the work that we loved. So they were telling me how lucky I was to be starting in a business where you got residuals. Fast forward to today. And like in one single career, I've seen so many things change, and we're kind of like back to kind of a place where we were with those old actors who were telling me that they didn't get. Yeah. They didn't have the protections that they once had, that I enjoyed. So I sit in this very sweet spot of starting my career at a time when you could amass a pension, you could do X amount of guest stars a year and, raise a family and work in the business and be a journeyman. And that is more challenging today. And so I have two younger brothers who are pursuing careers as actors, and I talk to them a great deal about those challenges. And for them, I don't know that their reality will be the same, because we have streaming now. I mean, the whole structure, there's been so much market disruption, business disruption about how we get paid, that I do often wonder how journeyman actor, or if that will even be a term 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think that we've talked a little bit on this podcast with other folks about how much it costs sometimes to be an actor. Like if you're going to go to, a film festival, how much you have to invest in your, sometimes oftentimes if it's a woman, it's like hair and makeup you have to pay for and all this stuff. In some cases, you're flying yourself to this,
It's obscene. It's obscene.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I look at it, very much, and I've always tried as hard as it was and is at times to sort of understand, a lot of things we do in this business are loss leaders, meaning we do it knowing that we're not going to recoup that back, but with hopes to advance the ball either in, being more well-known or people, that's why we do it. And we spend all of this time and resources with coaching and, self-taping. And of course, now I think that's getting a lot cheaper, but the hair and makeup, of course, now in this pandemic, people are learning how to do their hair and makeup, but you can't, I can't fly a plane. So I am, I can't fly, you're going to pay to fly yourself there. And people don't often understand that to be just a working actor, the kinds of commitments financially, mentally, emotionally that we are putting forward to do the thing that we love doing. And I have to say, I did reach a point in my grief after the loss of my husband, where I realized that if I wanted to go forward and do that, I also had to create another revenue stream for myself, I hoped. And that also, I was thinking, well, maybe if I wrote something, I didn't know that I would write a book that would become, a bestseller by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought, oh, maybe I could write magazine articles, like on the side. You know what I mean? Like that could be like my side hustle to my, I was just sort of looking for creative ways to diversify, which, we all get now. That's sort of the economy everyone is in. But I think we as actors have been principled and accustomed to doing that from the beginning of our careers. We've never once thought, oh, I just act 100% and do nothing else. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
Well, Tembi, I am so happy that it has worked out. This book from scratch it's beautiful. It is really beautiful. I so appreciate that you came on to take the time to chat with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You have such an incredible life and incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing it with me today. And I wish you so much happiness in your new marriage.
Thank you.
Best wishes for all of your upcoming projects. What is the latest with the production on the Netflix series? Were you into production? What's the status?
So we have all of our scripts written. And we've hired our director. We're sort of in this waiting mode. We're meeting with casting director soon. I think we're going to be set to go, all plans being what they are, to begin filming in January and start pre-production sometime this fall.
That's so exciting. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And other than that, I have a small part in. There are no small parts. See, I shouldn't say that. I have a role in Never Have I Ever.
Right, which just got a second season. Congratulations.
I know. So I hope they'll ask me back. We'll see.
I'm sure that you have a good relationship with Netflix at this point.
Oh, this has been such a blast. Thank you so very much. I talk to you anytime, all day long. I love talking about craft and acting and creativity and the ways that we try to make a living as artistic people in the world. It's just, I think we have to share that knowledge.
Well, there you have it. My conversation with Tembi Locke. A big thank you again to Tembi for doing it. I hope you all enjoyed it. You can find Tembi's memoir, From Scratch, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and IndieBound. The little girl in the Norman Rockwell painting referenced at the top of the interview is Ruby Bridges, one of the youngest political activists in U.S. history. The fact that Ms. Bridges' name didn't immediately come to me in the moment shows I've still got work to do in my own ongoing education about the civil rights movement. I've had the opportunity to speak with more than a few guests this season who hold first-person experiences with systemic racism in the arts world and within the country at large. We have an historic opportunity to elect an extremely qualified Black and South Asian American woman to be Vice President of the United States this coming Tuesday. This is it, folks. History looking us directly in the eyes. Let's not get this one wrong. We previously committed to splitting 20% of our Patreon subscriptions between the Louisville Community Bail Fund for those protesting in honor of Breonna Taylor and to Black Lives Matter. We will at this point donate the entirety of the remaining proceeds of our Patreon subscriptions for this season to Black Lives Matter. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thingsaregoinggreatforme. And if you're in Los Angeles and you've already voted by mail, you can go to lavote.net to check your mail-in ballot status to make sure your ballot has been received and verified. Next up is Vinny Chhibber. We talk about the importance of civic engagement and voting, losing a lead in a new TV show due to the pandemic, our respective run-ins with Philip Seymour Hoffman, Vinny's production company and his documentary Lost in America, and his organization, The Salon. Here now is me talking with the charming and very insightful Vinny Chhibber. So this was funny. I was talking to my sound engineer, Chris. Chris was also the best man at my wedding. And you and him and I were all in an acting class together. And and so I said, hey, I'm about to interview Vinny, and he brought up this memory.
The time he said he wasn't going out, and then I ran into him later. Oh, I remember.
Okay, so all right, great. So I'm gonna hear your side of this because this was really funny the way he told it. So he said, I guess like 10 or more years ago, Chris was supposed to be in a reading of a play that you'd set up. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, and he was supposed to do it, and he bailed and said he was like sick or something. And then after the reading, we went to the bar, and that dude was there.
I saw you later. You
I don't
didn't tell me
remember all
that
the
part.
specifics, but I remember the look on his face when I walked in.
Okay, so here's what he told me. This is what really happened because maybe you don't know what really happened. This is so great. So I guess he's supposed to be in a reading of a play that you set up. Apparently, he and I had gotten so stoned that afternoon that he completely forgot about this reading until you called him and you were like, "Where are you, man?" And he told me that he told you, "Sorry, buddy, like I was too high to do it," or whatever. But he said he was like, you were not mad. He said he could tell that you were mad, but he said that you were really cool about it. And but apparently you repeatedly said like, "Seriously, dude." Which is about as angry. That sounds
like me. Yo, that sounds like me.
That's like, about as angry as like a certain kind of straight dude gets. "Seriously, dude." It's so funny.
Yeah, I'm sure I said that. I don't remember like that, but like, yeah, that sounds like me.
That's such bro culture. "Seriously, dude."
It really is.
So listen, I just want to say it's so funny. It's such a funny story. So he said to me, he was like, "Vinny probably still hates me. Do you still hate Chris?"
No. My God, it was a play reading.
Yeah.
It was more like, don't be an asshole, man. Like, just be cool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Seriously? That's basically what it was.
I mean, it's so understandable. I would have been furious if it was my thing. I would have lit him up.
Make no mistake about it. I was going to like, but
what did you end up doing?
It's play reading, and it's like whatever.
Were you able to grab someone quickly to have them read the part?
Honestly, I think this probably speaks to why I don't begrudge anyone. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I think it was more than 10 years ago. I really do.
He said he referenced an apartment that I was living in that was like I had only been in LA for maybe a year and a half. So it could have been longer.
This was like 2008.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm like, I don't get stoned in the afternoon anymore. Not that much. I mean, during the pandemic, it's sort of, I don't know, once or twice. But like, not really. So yeah, it felt like it was a long time ago. It's so funny.
It was a hot minute ago. Tell him no. I hope he's doing well, and I do not begrudge him at all for getting high in the middle of the afternoon and missing a reading.
He's a very forgivable man.
He is. That's a great adjective to use about him.
Yeah,
it's like the definitive adjective.
He's a very lovable guy. It's hard to not love the guy, even when he's infuriating. My cousin is a playwright, and he was living up in Chicago for a lot of years. And he remembered a story about, I think it was Jon Favreau, was doing like a play up in Chicago, had a part in this play, and like the day they were opening, like opening night, he booked Rudy.
Oh man!
Which he appears in, so. He's like I guess he can't do the show that night, and my cousin said like the director of the play had been like off cigarettes for like X amount of years or whatever, like went out, like bought a pack of smokes like that night. Had to figure it out.
I mean, you just have to figure it out, right?
Yeah. So how you doing, man? Generally, how
given I'm not gonna lie, it's been a challenging couple of weeks, and I've had to kind of remind myself that my family and my friends are healthy and safe, and that I have I live with one of my best friends. I have a lovely girlfriend, and I'm keenly aware of the privilege that I enjoy when I say it's been a tough couple of weeks, but it's been a tough couple of weeks. It's like projects that I was attached to, that the paperwork's done, I've been just
They're officially canceled.
Officially canceled, and you and I know how difficult it is to book leads on shows and projects. It's like I don't want to say difficult. I should say like it doesn't just, you don't stumble across like the perfect part and the perfect show and the perfect all these things that you're like, oh my god, I'm so like it's so rare, and that was this was one of those for me, and we'd been on hold since January.
Yeah,
I've been attacked, and so you just find out like, hey, can't do it.
So was this a pilot that was casting this?
No, it was a direct to series. It was a series order.
Oof.
Oof. I know. I know. It was. Oof.
Jeez, man.
It was. Yeah. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just well, I'm not going to say that, but I am going to say that at this time.
Were you going to say it's Donald Trump's fault?
I'm not going to say. I hesitate to say that because
Yeah.
I think we, in some ways, we are all culpable for where we're at, right? Like collectively speaking, I know your face just did a thing, and I understand what you're saying.
Well, no, I don't know what did my face. I literally
there's
reached
a face. There's a face. There's a clawed face. You're like, wow.
I reached for some water. No. I think when you were saying, I guess my brain, the place I think my brain went to when you said we're all culpable, I guess is maybe that we are seeing sort of like groupthink, but in some unhealthy ways. Is that what you're talking about? Like people showing up at the beach and like partying, and is that what you mean?
I think that there are so many things that we can point to. One is that, look, regardless of what one person says or does, it's individual responsibility, right? When it comes to like, I'm going to put on a mask, I'm going to stay safe, I'm going to stay away from people, I'm going to do the things that I need to do, not only for myself, but for other people around me, for the community around me, for society around me. So,
yeah.
And the other thing is, it's voting. Like we all, and myself included, fell asleep. And I'm not talking about just national elections. I'm talking about like state, local, municipal elections that we just fell asleep at the wheel for a decade.
So important.
And a lot of people, we didn't pay. We didn't even know who funds the police department here, who makes sure the arts are funded here, or who is in the state legislature passing bills that we find morally and ethically objectionable.
Right.
I don't know that even gubernatorial races. I think we all fell asleep for a very long time.
Yeah, certainly like 2018, I think was the first time that I can recall really engaging in like midterm elections.
Yes.
And getting on the phone for people. And, I feel like I'd been active back starting with, I guess, when Barack Obama was running in 2008, getting on the phone with people for the first time. You could do it from home, which was a new thing. You could do it using your laptop. And I remember having wild conversations with people. They'd connect you with somebody in some other state. And I remember people asking, like, don't you think that guy's the devil? And you were like,
my Lord.
No, I don't. Like, no, why would you say that? And you
why would you say that?
Yeah, why would you say that? You go right off script because you're supposed to basically at that point, probably you're supposed to hang up the phone, but
you kept going.
I mean, I think probably because I'm very curious about people. So yeah, probably I was like, why would you say that?
I would be too. I would ask the same question, which is why would you say that?
Yeah, I don't see any horns. I mean, I don't know what you're referring to, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we have to put all of this in perspective. Certainly, Hollywood though is closed for business. I mean, they keep saying, "Oh, we'll go back in August. We'll go back in September. We'll go back in November." Like. Are you? Is anything moving for you that's new that's happening now?
Well, that was supposed to be it.
Yeah,
however,
of course.
The project I spoke. Right now, I think I do have friends who either have already left, who are already in Canada and Europe and quarantining, and they're gearing up. I have friends who have shooting dates least outside shooting dates for September and October in LA. So I mean, and I know development is really, right now, there are a lot of people developing content. Like a lot of companies, a lot of people, they're just gearing up for, when we have some sort of process set. But it's going to be we're going to have to just learn how to work differently. Like I shot a piece a couple of months ago where they basically sent a dude sat in his car outside my apartment all day. He left a huge cart in our lobby, and on the cart, camera, lenses, lavs, lights, sandbags, apple boxes, props, laptop, and then they had an iPad mounted underneath the camera lens.
Wow.
And they basically had me connect their laptop to the camera, and in a call, they had separate virtual rooms with different department heads, and that's how we set up the shot.
So wait a minute. I'm sorry. This is for what? Which project was this for?
Oh, this was honestly, this was a commercial with Michel Gondry. And
oh my God! Nice.
And I
cool.
I honestly never do. I'm just not great at them. Commercial work is challenging for me usually.
Okay.
But
yeah.
It's really it's really hard.
Commercials, typically you're really trying to thread a needle with commercials. There's not a lot of ambiguity in terms of what they want.
Yeah.
Would you say, like, you got to kind of hit your mark and nail the line the way they want you to say the line?
I think you can say it. I feel like I rarely audition for them anyways, but I feel like you have probably had more success in that. I don't know. I can't answer it because I have no idea how I booked that one. So
I never know why I book them. When I do book them, I'm always like, oh, they were really. Oh, okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I have no idea. But this one, yeah, it was a project with. But one of the reasons I was like, yes,
Michel Gondry,
was because of that. But the whole process was like really interesting. Talking, you had a set designer asking you, like, do you have anything that has a little bit more of a pattern to it? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So I have a red blanket that I can, and having to do this 30-second kind of improv exercise over and over and over again for seriously 8 hours.
Wow.
And having you'd hear it, you say, like it was, but you could see.
I was doing a face there. I'll tell you that much. That was really funny. I like your Michel Gondry impression. He's
a really, really good dude. And it's a very dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
I remember when they were talking, some of the props I'd sent over, there was one prop in particular and it was just it was the piece of paper we had to hold up they were going to replace with a photograph, but they had the visual effects crosses things on it. Okay. And he did not like the fact that it was cardboard and not paper. He wanted it to be paper.
Something that is not going to be on camera at all.
It's just,
right?
Well, we had to, part of the piece was we had to put it up to the screen, but he wanted it to be paper because they were going to replace it. He wanted the texture for whatever they're going to put on top.
Okay, all right. That seems like it makes sense. Okay, I got it.
Now, he said, this is the first day. Nobody really knows anybody. So he goes, and he says that he was producing this with his brother, and he says that when they tell him about the cardboard instead of the paper, he goes, who said yes to this? And they say, your brother did. He goes, this is merde. This is terrible. I am never working with my brother again. And he just sat on it. He just said it and then sat there, and no one said anything.
Until somebody figured it out.
I started laughing. Which is why which is why later he was he was fun with me, but yeah, he's a really funny, really good dude, and I just wanted to be able to say I don't know when I'm going to get that chance to work with that dude. So hey, I was like 30 seconds, fine, like let's do it.
I think that has happened to me on occasion with commercial auditions where it's like I remember going to a callback once. They won't tell you sometimes, that like you're going to walk into the room and like, I think it was the guy's name is Todd Field. He directed
I know that name.
In the Bedroom. I remember that was one. Like I went to a callback for something that I think was a comedy and I walked in and I think someone in the hallway was like, "Oh, Todd Field is in there." And you're like, "Well, fuck this." Like give me another 5 minutes. Like just look at the fucking Our friend Jonathan Runyon did a bank commercial that Philip Seymour Hoffman directed.ดyou know that?
No.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of I can't remember the name of the bank, and but Jonathan got to spend a couple days with Philip Seymour Hoffman and has some outstanding memories. But PSH was making a little extra scratch directing a commercial at the time.
You ran into him at school though, right?
Oh, did I ever tell you I met him? I
ran into him a couple of times, man.
I ran into him. I was going to see a production in the UK of Jesus Hop the A Train, which was a Labyrinth production, and I was there with my mom, and he was there. It was at the Donmar warehouse, and my mom was great about. She knew how much I loved him, and she was like, "You should go talk to him." So. I went over to him at the end of the show. He was standing outside with an orange baseball cap on, and I just said, like, "Hey, Mr. Hoffman, like, I'm such a big fan of you," or something like that. And I said, I think you teach at Adler every once in a while, and I'd just love to. Hope I get the opportunity to like work with you at some point. And he gave me. He somehow I can't remember exactly, but he gave me his assistant's information to be in touch with him. So then I would invite him to like every single thing that we were doing at NYU through his assistant. If I was doing a play, I'd be like, "Hey, is he available?" Just come see, And the response was always like, "Well, he's filming in Budapest or whatever." So it's like, nah. Right. But he was. I will say, like, he was awesome to me in my couple of seconds with him. He was so cool. Such a cool dude.
Yeah, the few times I got a chance to speak with him, I found him to be like incredibly generous with his time and his advice, and just kind. Yep. Really, really kind person. Have you seen the movie Loving Liza?
Mm-hmm. I think I've seen. I've seen every. I don't do not with every actor, but I think with him, I've seen every single thing he's done.
That was a dark film. But
huffing fumes is a weird thing to be like, people do that.
Yeah, it's just like of all the things though.
Yeah.
But he was so good in it, and I went to a screening of it that he just happened to be at, and he ended up talking for like 10 minutes, which at that time, we're in school, you're like
the best.
It was really. I also appreciate it when someone. When you meet someone that you respect artistically that way, that they're like a nice person.
Yep. Doesn't always happen that way.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
But in this case, it did, and man, we lost one.
Yeah, we lost some people that For me, it was like him and Gandolfini and Robin Williams. Like, those three. That was
Robin Williams broke me, dude. Yeah. I cried.
Yeah.
I just that was rough.
So now you and I, we go all the way back to Stella Adler Studios.
Yes, sir.
You were in the conservatory program there. Very nice guy. Always a fun, welcome smile. It was always a pleasure chatting with you around the studio. I remember cracking up a lot with you.
Yes, there was a lot of laughing. This is what I appreciate about you. We're never short of laughs.
No, we aren't. And so then we moved out to LA with a group of actors, and you and I have been in multiple acting classes together over the years. But it's always great catching up. Last time you and I hung out, you and me, we were grabbing coffee, and you had started a production company and were producing films, right? And you're still doing that.
Yes. Yes, yes. There are about three different, I think three different things I'm involved in. One was the production company called Chhibber Productions. I started it with Mike Manning. I think it was 2013. I think. We produced three films. One is Folk Hero Funny Guy, which premiered at Tribeca, and the second was MFA, which premiered at South by, and
We had
the third.
Jess Nurse.
Sorry,
Jess Nurse was somebody I interviewed for this series, and she was in that, I think, right?
Oh,
MFA.
yeah. Jess Nurse is great.
Yeah,
Good people.
Good
Very
people.
talented. And then we recently wrapped up a documentary called Lost in America about homeless youth in the United States. Rosario Dawson, Halle Berry, and a few other people were on board as EPs with us on that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that particular project. Could you talk a little bit about how that one came about?
The filmmaker Rotimi Rainwater reached out to us over Facebook because he saw, I don't know where he saw like a press release or something about what the company was founded. The premise that Chhibberman is founded on is creative activism. That is using art to facilitate change in the communities around us. And so he saw that, and he sent us an email, Facebook message, and we went and saw like maybe 10 minutes of footage, and we're like, we've never produced a documentary before. We don't know anything. You know, we had kind of produced one, but not like on this, you know, this was like, they've got the footage, they've got a little bit of funding, but they don't. And I got to tell you, man, that the circles we run in, I know that a lot of people are at least try to be as socially politically aware as they can be. I was so taken aback by just the stories broke me. The numbers shocked me. Yeah. The sheer number of youth in the United States that are homeless is like, you wouldn't think. You don't think about it, but we're talking in the millions.
Wow.
And it was an exercise in humility and gratitude and the acknowledgement of privilege.
Yeah.
Like, you know, thank God I had the parents I did, and thank God I had the friends I did, and the family I did, and the community I have, because watch it.
Were the takeaways, where can people watch it now?
I think you can now. I mean, you can watch it. It's on VOD, so you should be able to get it pretty much anywhere.
Okay. Google the title. Yeah. It's called
Lost in America.
Lost in America. Were there any takeaways in terms of what can be done to solve?
Yeah, I mean, there are. You can go to lostinamericafilm.com, by the way, and that should give you pretty much. There's a foundation that the filmmakers started that works with homeless youth. There are ways. I mean, we're talking about like paying attention, really, who you're voting for. Voting makes an enormous difference. Being involved in your community makes a huge difference. So, like when we're talking about like, okay, there's the story about these kids. It was in some state in New England. I can't remember. It was Vermont or New Hampshire. And there's this phrase we call, there's this acronym, it's NIMBY, which means not in my backyard, which means people may acknowledge homelessness, but they don't want to see it. Yeah. So a municipality had been given funds to build a center for homeless youth, a place where they could sleep, a place where they could be safe. And they refused to take the money because they didn't want it in their town. So instead, these kids had to walk across this bridge in like freezing. This is I can't remember what the term is. It's like where they can stay warm in the winter. Wouldn't open till 7 p.m. They had to walk in the dark across the bridge through whatever to get to this place where if there was enough room, then they would get a place to stay. And the like that. It's that type. That's why voting matters, and that's why paying attention to what's happening in one's community matters, because those kids should never have to do that. Is nuts. That is incredibly callous, and I don't think people mean for it to be that way. They just don't. Like, you're confronted with your own complicity in the system that exists, and sure. I think that that's really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would have been, I think about my own experience. Like, I got very lucky I was adopted by a couple of Americans, but I was born into a situation where historically somebody like me would have been potentially taken away by the church and malnourished and maybe end up buried underneath a church as a child. Yeah. So,
oh my Lord,
I got incredibly lucky to be placed with a family, and thoughtfully placed with a family.
Yes.
I was lucky that my birth mother made some very smart and thoughtful decisions for my life at the time. But yeah, but for the grace of God go I is one of those things to think about when thinking about those kinds of stories. So you, in terms of producing independent film, this is one of those things that is supposed to be a very hard part of the business. You had studied acting. So what were some of the things that you learned when you got into producing independent film?
One is I learned to always approach every situation assuming that I didn't know. Like, I don't know. When talking to anyone, assuming that I don't know everything, and that was the easiest way for me to help whomever it was that I was supposed to help. I also think that actors are uniquely suited to it.
You do?
Because we are one of the few people that I do. Because especially if you've been in the theater, because if you've done any sort of black box independent theater, if you've had to take an acting class where you've had to like bring all your props and everything in there, you have to do everything. And even if you're working in film and television, you are one of very few people that works with, interacts with, or someone is interacting with you in some capacity on every level of production, right?
Yeah. Whether
it's hair and makeup, sound, editing, cinematography, directing, writing, all those things, you're the person that it funnels through.
Yeah.
So I think that in that respect, yes. We are. And I wish, looking back on school, I wish one of the things that we had really engaged in was the idea of producing your own content.
Yep.
And the other thing that I think was important is that choosing the right partner, choosing the right people to work with, who you surround yourself with. It's not just like, oh, this is my best friend. I trust this person. It is, I trust this person. They are talented. And if they say something's going to get done, they get it done.
They get it done. Yeah.
And they also balance out because not everybody has the same strengths, right? So I've been fortunate that Mike Manning, my producing partner, and I balanced each other out really, really well. And despite not really having any experience in producing up to that point, we took a year we took meetings, and Mike is so good at building social capital. We had meetings with some really, really successful, influential producers in both film and television who gave us really, really great advice and became advocates for us in rooms that we had no business being in at the time. And we brought on people that we knew. That was the other thing. Is like, whether you're casting or you're looking for a DP or you're even taking meetings with directors, the first place you go to is your own people. There are always ways I'm looking to do that, because I know, if there's a gig and I'm like, oh, this is Claude, that's who I'm going to call, because I know you, I know your work, and I know you know what you're doing. Like, I don't have to go out outside of my network for that. So, I think those were the. I will say that this is for any actor that's listening to it. If you're going to produce a short film, try and this was told, like, numerous producers have said this, try and make sure it's tied to a larger project.
Oh, like
try and make sure it's a proof of almost functions as both an artistic piece, but also a proof of concept.
Yeah, so like Whiplash. Whiplash started as a short.
Yes, Whiplash is a great example.
Yeah, started as a short, then becomes feature film. Yeah.
I think, So right now we're just searching for our newest project, and the last thing that I'm working on right now is this organization called the Salon.
This is in an effort to bolster South Asian visibility in front of and behind the camera. You both
and narrative and stories, right? Because I think when even because I look back at, like, even the plays that you and I had to do, or the stories that we had to tell, we would go and we would take translations from, like, a Russian playwright or a German playwright or an Italian playwright or a French playwright. I don't remember ever doing a play from Japan.
Right.
Or doing a play from India, or doing, you know what I mean? Like, it was, and I don't think that they, or that studio or that school in particular is the only one. I think that's
it's pretty pervasive in America.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it was the type of stories, because I started, looking at how that affected the way I saw myself as a kid, and when you're watching television or you're watching film, and the only time you see yourself represented, someone's making fun of you the whole time.
Right.
It does start to play on your sense of self-worth and the way you see yourself.
Right.
And then when you go into an institution, or I should say a career in the arts that is supposed to be inclusive and supposed to be freeing and where you can breathe, and you still come across, and not that I don't have a problem with doing any of those plays. They're brilliant. All I'm saying is that there are also other places where we can pull narrative from, that we can explore, that don't necessarily have to do with Chekhov, Shakespeare, or Moliere. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so it started there, but I think more importantly, when I looked at the types of characters I wanted to play, or the types of stories I wanted to tell, advocacy or any of those things, I didn't see a lot of it out there, and I wondered why. And it was conversations about, opportunity and advocacy and mentorship and all these things, and and community.
Yeah, so the program the Salon seeks to connect aspiring South Asian talent with established members of the entertainment industry. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And where can prospective applicants apply for the program?
They can go to thesalon.xyz, and if they go there, there's a link to the mentorship program. They can apply there, and I think mentorship's a pretty big one, because when you come out here and there is no one to guide you, no one to walk you through, because being an actor of color, and specifically South Asian, there are just so few people. There were just so few people here.
As a member of your own community,
as a member of this community, no, there wasn't anyone that could tell you, well, what do you do when the only jobs you're going out for require you to speak in an accent that makes you ashamed of who you are?
Right.
What do you do when you're constantly being asked to play a terrorist that is terrorizing the very country you live in? What do you do when people continue to perpetuate this idea of what it is to be South Asian, and that's bad?
Right.
So, or this is the only thing it can be.
That's right. The
You're
boxes.
just kind of stuck in this box. Yeah. And you kind of had to like stumble through those appointments, those auditions, those meetings with agents and managers and casting directors and producers. You just had no way to navigate, and you had no one to really advocate on your behalf in that particular case, because it was there was nothing.
And you're being told in agent meetings early on, cut and dry, like, you're not going to work in these roles. You're not going to work in these roles.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which is interesting because
the big one was like, are you funny?
That was a big one. Yeah, you had to be funny because you were going to be put into a sidekick position, or that's what they're going to believe. Yeah.
Like, and I didn't, you know what, man? It took a while before I worked.
Yeah, well, because you're not really a character looking dude. You are a leading man.
Thanks, man. But I did not book for a while because of that.
Yeah.
It was really, you just didn't get in the rooms for the stuff that you were right for. You were, they're just, when you look at a film and you're talking about casting, this is the only way to put it, is if you would have like a serious character actor like Paul Giamatti,
mm-hmm.
or is it Tom Cruise, right? Those two men are talented, but the film changes drastically depending on who's the lead of it.
Yeah, sure. The Paul Giamatti doing Mission Impossible. I would love to see
Mission Impossible, dude.
Paul Giamatti on the side of a building would be pretty fucking funny. I don't think you'd be sitting there being like, he's such a badass. I think naturally you'd just be like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I hope he's okay.
But no, those two men are brilliant. But
yeah,
that's kind of the situation that you're in.
Yeah,
it's just like, well, you're brown. This says Egyptian. Oh, it doesn't matter. And they're like, what?
Oh boy, yeah,
What?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting for me is like, I've got this mixed heritage and I'm half Middle Eastern, but of course, I pass really for white. So it's like, I you typically just sort of watch what's happening, and, just have to, I find myself a lot just being like, well, that's really stupid, but like, I gotta kind of just shut up and just gotta be like.
No, I mean, look. The conversations themselves are, of course, nuanced and.
Well, here I wanted to ask you about something in particular.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the work that you're doing as an actor. So now you more recently you've popped up on a lot of current hot shows like Animal Kingdom and God Friended Me. In addition to others, you also cameoed in some prestige films like Marriage Story. And am I overselling that? Is that why you're laughing?
No,
I didn't see.
I
love
it. Go with it.
I didn't see Marriage Story because I thought it would depress me because I am married, and I just thought
it will.
It will, exactly.
Good movie.
I'll watch it eventually. You also starred as Liam Bhatt in the Red Line, which was a series that was exec produced by Ava DuVernay and Greg Berlanti, and it aired for a season on CBS. So huge congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You played a Chicago school teacher who happens to be Muslim and gay. You were also considered a standout for your work on the series. So I wanted to ask you, so did you feel a lot of responsibility with those particular descriptors to play that character?
Oh, man, it was, that sort of intersectionality is it's just complicated. And I did feel a lot of, I just felt a responsibility, so I went about educating myself in the best way I could. And that was reading and talking to people and taking in as much information as I could, and wanting to make sure that what I presented, at the end of the day, was the most nuanced, full version of Liam as I could.
Yeah. And critics really loved you in this role.
That was I mean, it was really, really not. Obviously that's not why we do it, but it was really nice to hear that people were affected by it, and I did, hearing from also people that identified with it, and it was the first time they'd seen themselves represented in a story in a positive way, and it really does remind you how powerful storytelling is. What we do can really, really change the way people think and see themselves. It's awesome.
So I wanted to ask you, this is kind of an interesting question. So you're currently working with a publicist, is that correct?
I am.
Okay. So now I've never had a publicist myself, but it's considered normal once an actor is on a network series to have one. So here's an interesting question for you. When do you think an actor should get a publicist?
When they have something to, I do not think, unless it's, how do I say this? Let me take that back for a second. I was going to say, like, when you have something to talk about, but that's relative. So I don't want to say that.
Right.
What I do want to say, because it is an expense, but especially now, let's say you are a series reg on a show, or you're like or a lead in a film, in a big film that's going to be coming out, or a large supporting in a film, or theater. Like, let's say you're going to be in the show. Only because, whereas, look, I think at the end of the day, the work is the work. Like, you have to do that well first before anything else. That is all you focus on, especially if it's your like first gig. Because I'm assuming that the question is predicated on this. Whomever it is hasn't had a publicist before, so they're like,
I think it's an interesting question for people who listen to, because it's one of those. I also talked to somebody else, Chantal Thuy.
Dude, she's my people. Dude, I love her.
She's awesome, and I talked to her about, she optioned a book.
Yes, she did.
So these are like things that I think people, I think there's some mystery around like these processes and when these things are supposed to happen in a career. So that's why I think they're interesting to talk about.
Oh yeah. And dude, I'm so glad you talked to Chantal. She's a close friend of mine. She's so great.
She is great,
really talented too. Fiercely talented.
Yeah.
I would say, it's so weird because Chantal and I had this conversation a couple of years ago about the whole publicist thing.
Oh, you did? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we did. Because a lot of my, I should say, mutual friends of ours, there are a lot of people kind of in the last like maybe 4 years have started to kind of pop off. Or like you start to see ascend. And I ultimately, what it came to me was, I was like, well, I don't know that whether the studio or the network, like, they have their own publicists, right? Warner Brothers has their own publicity team. CBS has their own publicity team.
Right.
But I think, either is to help you kind of increase your brand footprint as an actor, like for whatever the show is, or in crisis if something goes wrong. Hopefully it's much more of the prior and none of the latter.
So in the prior, it's really kind of about like sort of making sure
in the
that
prior, it's like,
you have a job maybe after that show ends.
You have a job maybe after that show when it's like getting ready to like.
Because once you're a network series lead, you're on a short list every pilot season from then on.
Every pilot season, I will say this though, it depends on who you are. So like, if you're already a brand name, you already are. And I will say that it takes more than one show, I think, before you're like. But the nature of the appointments does change, like the types of opportunities afforded to you. I don't know if the number really does, but people do. I think you feel a little freer creatively to kind of take. I don't want to say take the risks, but like engage in the type of character building and narrative that you initially came in wanting to do anyways.
Yeah.
Now you have a little agency it's like, it's a very internal thing, but like, that was my, but I'm glad. Yeah. So that, or like, let's say you get cast in a pilot, or you get cast in something and it's very strong recurring arc or whatever. A publicist is the one that can call up the trades and let them know it's happening, or someone reaches out and they're the person that can say, oh, I don't think this is a good idea for you to do, or, oh, this would be great for you to do.
Are they expensive? Do they take commission like an agent does?
I think it depends on the publicist, honestly.
Okay.
I can't say that definitively, but I think so. I think that they can work either on a retainer. I think it mostly is retainer now. It's mostly retainer.
So it's expensive to have one.
Oh, it can. It depends on who you're working with, and what they're trying to do. Like yes, it is expensive.
So let me ask you. So where can people find you online?
On Instagram and on Twitter, it's Chhibber. That's VCHHIBBER. And Vinny Chhibber on Facebook. And I don't have like an official website or anything. I guess IMDb.
But you're still doing Facebook.
I'm not on Facebook, but the Instagram post to the business, I don't really go on there, but like it's on there.
It's on there. Got it. All right. Well, listen, buddy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you,
here.
Man. This was great. It was great just to catch up.
Oh, it always is. You're very kind to make the time. Congrats on all your success. I'm looking forward to watching you do more exciting things. And I'm wishing you safety and good health, man.
Yeah, same to you. Same to you.
To everyone out there, if you listened all the way to the end of this 10th episode, I want to say thanks again. This series was born out of a desire to connect with talented friends during a hugely bizarre moment in history that has profoundly affected the United States and many other countries around the world. Working on this series was a salve for my own mental health. I hope it brought you some joy. I hope it was a respite during these last couple months. Our sound engineer is Christopher Frontiero, and our series composer is Cormac Bluestone. Our series graphics editor is Dan Olszewski. I'd also like to thank my wife, Catherine. I'd like to say another thanks to Winston Carter and also to Erica Curry. Thank you to Matthew Carlin for designing our website, Nikki DiGaetano and Sella Shaloni for photography, and to Ryan Harvey Percy for handling our Twitter account. Thanks to Icelandic Glacial for their hugely helpful support. Thanks to my parents, and thanks to my guests this season. Stay tuned.